Welcome to a what we'll call a refurbished edition of the Warriors Plus Minus podcast. Tim Kawakami with me, Marcus Thompson with me.
We're back.
Yeah.
We're back.
Refurbished made it seem like we were cooked and broken and somebody had to fix us up. Like, nah, this is just
we might have been cooked. I mean,
They said it was over. They said it was over when Durant left. They said it was all over.
Would you consider the last couple of Warrior seasons cooked? I mean, it was 6 seeds, squeak to the second round.
Man, that's most of the NBA. They're a good team. You just want to have a good product out there.
They play it, but it was 46 wins. I
just want to make sure that we capitalize and maximize Slater's prime years. I just want to make sure because we're getting to the end of them. And we got to just maximize.
We are. That is the first factual statement of the refurbished Warriors Plus Minus podcast. My prime days are fading quickly.
Right on the edge.
Mid road trip already. First long mid road trip of the season. I'm just like, ooh, getting a little woozy. But how are you guys?
I'm good. I'm glad to be
refurbishing. I'll tell you that much.
Hey,
a little software upgrade is fine. Just a little update, not a refurbishment. My screen wasn't cracked.
I mean, we certainly didn't acquire like a Paul George, a Laurie Marketing, but we're
we almost got put out. We almost got put out for good. And Slater, I credit your work at it. You worked at this to keep this podcast alive. And we heard about it, which is what I appreciated. Like, it wasn't just like a few people. Slater heard about it at games. I heard about it at games a few times. People on the street like saying, "Hey, you're going to do plus minus?" I just heard it like a week ago. So that's all appreciated.
Road arenas this week.
Really?
Yeah, because you have a lot of fans that are and they're in various states. They go to their 1 or 2 Warriors games a year. They go to the DC game. I saw a couple people in DC that said something to me. I saw a guy in Boston yesterday stop me right near the media seats. It was like, when is it? I heard it might be. He was like almost asking for a day, and I was like, soon. And here, look, we're back again. I don't know that people too much want us to discuss this too much because there is a lot we have yet to discuss.
Good timing for this return. Good timing.
Is it fair to say we were just waiting for a real Warriors win?
I mean, I was internally like, should we just shift to Kings? I mean, the Thunder, they're pretty good. Like,
no, I thought Marcus was going to do track and field plus minus. I know that's coming. I know the track and field podcast is coming.
All I need is 2 other qualified co-hosts that is on.
This would be not include anybody else on his podcast. But that's okay.
He needs to be on the next season of that Netflix for
come on in.
Put me on Sprint, baby. Let's go.
There we go.
I was there.
Okay, 7-1. I would say the most impressive part of the 7-1 is how little Steph Curry has been within it. I think he's like 210th in the league in minutes played. He's played about the same as like Gerson Yabusele and Dalton Connect, because obviously he plays in the 20s, the first 3 games, sprains the ankle, 24 in his return. Last night was the first real like high usage Steph Curry game. And it's crazy. Like 34 minutes felt like a ton, right?
What hit me is when he gets to 27, that's a season high. He went, what the hell? The season's 2 weeks through and 27 is his high just because he had not had to score for them to get that record, and obviously missed 3 games. We do want to point out we're recording this on Thursday, the day after the Warriors' victory in Boston. They play Cleveland Friday. That's tomorrow. We are not 100% sure when this will post. There's different clearances that we have to make, but we're pretty certain this is going to post on Friday morning, Friday midday. But just be aware, we're talking about the Boston game being yesterday and the Cavaliers game being tomorrow, whenever you hear this. But we wanted to get this done. We went through a lot to get this, a lot of paces, a lot of work, a lot of steps, and we want to record this in that Celtics game. The Warriors being 7-1 is a good chance to be. Yeah, Steph Curry misses 3 of the games. They win all 3 of them. And
they're plus 64 with him off the floor this year so far through 8 games. Like, to me, that's been the most impressive part, and there's so many layers to it. And I don't know where you guys want to take that, but like they're not only surviving, they're winning without him right now.
Them too.
A big part of it is they talked a lot about this depth, but you could actually see it. Like against Boston, obviously Boston was down 2 players. I mean, it feels like they're always down, Kristaps Porzingis, but They didn't have Jaylen Brown. So obviously their depth was a bit compromised, but the Warriors just come at you in waves. It's just like, even when it's not, the starters aren't really clicking. All right, let's throw 5 like hungry, run around type players out there. You've got Buddy Hield shooting. You've got Kuminga at his best driving. You've got GP2 like hustling around, putting pressure. Like, they just have a wave, and then they have another wave after that. They could change it up. Like, you could really feel it. You could feel it wear on the other teams. Like, when you've got your guys in there. Peyton Pritchard has been balling. I don't know if anybody's been watching the Celtics, but he's having a great year. He's averaging like 16. Like, he had to deal with some stuff coming off the bench. It wasn't like it normally is. Yeah, I think their second unit is better.
Gary Payton flying over and blocking.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's just like, wait a second. They just have an ability to say, hey, let's switch this up a bit, right? Like Steve Kerr's like a DJ. Like, hey, let's turn it up. Let's slow it down. Either way,
the truth is, they were theoretically deep last season too, right? We had conversations about a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1 trade. The problem is, so much of their depth was playing poorly. Andrew Wiggins was horrible in the first month of the season. Klay Thompson was going through his thing. Kevon Looney had the worst season out of his last 5 last year. He is back. Wiggins is at least defensively, activity-wise, back. Gary Payton II was almost never available at key moments last season. Right now, at least he's healthy. He's changing games. Podziemski has been elevated into a role. Trace Jackson-Davis is now elevated into a role. Those guys at the start of last season, we didn't even know if they were NBA players. So, it's just everybody's playing better, too. It's not just like, they found so much new depth. It's just like, who is Kuminga the only guy on the team right now that you're slightly worried about how he's playing?
Good question. I think Trace Jackson-Davis is a question mark as an NBA starting center. There's going to be games like the Celtics where he just doesn't look up to speed. But then they got Looney they can throw right in there. It's clear they want to stay away from Draymond at center. I understand that. And he likes having Trace in the starting lineup because that's a defensive center behind him. Sometimes the game gets a little faster, Trace. So I'd say he's a little bit up in the air, but I think Moody has been I'm the one that's saying he was out of the rotation. I thought he would be out of the rotation to start the season. One of the reasons that Kerr's going to this 12 or 13 man rotation is to make sure Moody does play. I get that. And he's playing well. They're getting this good stuff from everybody up and down the line. And they obviously Boston was missing their 2 guys, but the Warriors were out Podziemski, and we know he's their biggest plus-minus guy. I think he still is. And they were without DeAnthony Melton, who we all thought was going to be pretty key to this season. He's now missed, 5 games? They got players. They just got guys. Kyle Anderson makes 3 threes. I mean, they got guys who are just stepping in.
He made 3 threes after not making
after not hitting the rim.
He has been so frustrated with himself offensively through these games. I mean, you see him after he had the game he went 0-9, but even through the other games, he'll be playing well, and Steve Kerr's glowing about him post game. The plus minus is good. I don't think anybody overall has been thinking he's played poorly. If Dario Saric had a bad shooting night last year, it was ooh, you can't have him on the floor. Kyle Anderson can have a bad shooting night, and he's still impacting the game. But he came into the season, Marcus, you remember being in Hawaii. Remember, it was all about he restructured the jumper. He was shooting it so well in the scrimmages. Just wait till you see it. And then he came out super cold. He's been fuming on the bench. One of the things I kind of like about Kyle Anderson, he's got a little bit of some heat to him.
He's got a Mets fan disposition to him.
He is a huge Mets fan. It was funny to be around him, as the Mets were kind of going through their playoff run. But he's got a little bit of a temper, which I think they like it. He's just been fuming, and then finally yesterday he hits 3 threes. And I happened to be in a section where I believe it was some of his family members, and they were going crazy when he hit the 3rd three. And you could tell it was a little bit of a weight off him, but I mean, that's huge. Those 3 from him on 3 straight possessions. And then Draymond shot it extremely poorly in the Boston game. But prior to that, I think he was 10-19 at one point from 3. So much is going right for them. That's almost why I want to pump the brakes on contention. We can see now. I'm so much is going right.
Man, ain't nobody saying that.
I feel today, after the Boston game, you're starting to get that tick up of are they back? Is the dynasty back?
We're saying they're back. They're back. We're saying it.
They're back. They're back is a threat, I think. But to me, the thing about Boston that that jumped out. I wasn't there, Slater, you were there, but the thing that jumped out is like they're asking for a lot of buy-in from guys. And that's kind of why it's working, right? You're getting a lot of guys who are like, yeah, I'm not gonna get the shots or minutes I want, but if I just play incredibly hard for a little bit for the time I'm out there, like eventually the ball's gonna swing my way, the team's gonna do well, and everybody's gonna benefit. Like this, I don't know if this could go on for a season, but you could just see the buy-in, right? But to me, the value of the Boston game was it was almost like they're saying, hey, if you could just keep Steph close, then you still have one of the best players in the league. And Boston, the way Steph kind of like just loves tormented Boston, it felt like a perfect scenario. You could see Boston getting tight. Like you could see them. Like they're like, oh man, I'm so sick of this dude. And it was really validation because the defense kept them in that game. Like the shot making of guys like Kyle Anderson, of Wiggs, who didn't play that well, but his downhillness, he played defense and his downhill, like all that stuff mattered. And they got them to a point where you were in a close game and you got Steph Curry on it. Like, and Steph delivers, right? And to me, that was all of this is built on this kind of idea of this chemistry and everybody buying in. And you got Kuminga coming off the bench, right? You got Moody finally starting. Even what happens with DeAnthony Melton when he gets back, right? Like everybody's got to take an L in this under this auspice that it'll work. It works when you can get Steph to the end of the game and Steph gets to be Steph. Like that works.
But you better keep winning because
winning.
This only works if people can't complain. Jonathan Kuminga can't come back to the locker room last night and look at 18 minutes and go, man, screw this, because they just beat the Celtics in Boston. But if they'd lost 3 of 4, you could suddenly go, hey, we might have won that game if I was on the floor.
And that'll happen. And that's going to happen, right? It might
happen in Cleveland.
And then Oklahoma City. I mean, losing those 2 games would be entirely understandable, but it could happen. And there could be questions, and we'll see. And, we've seen Kyle Anderson have a 5-minute game earlier in the season. We've seen Kuminga get dialed out of some things. I don't know if he's going to in the closing unit. I just don't know if he's going to be, but it also gives them energy though. It's one thing. It's like they can play as hard as they want to because they're not worried about playing 30 minutes. Like these guys, Gary Payton can dive, and he's going to do it anyway, but he can dive all over the place. He can do anything because he's coming out after a couple minutes, and then maybe he'll get another couple minutes, and that's probably going to be it. It does give them that. It keeps their legs. It certainly rests Steph. He doesn't
keep Steph's legs. Steph was playing defense.
Steph was playing. They needed him because they had Buddy Hield out there. And
Steph was
playing great help defense. But MT, I've been waiting to talk to you about this. When you're seeing the blitzing that they're doing on defense, this is what obviously to Tatum, they were blitzing every time there was a screen coming. They're sending 2 at him, making him give up the ball or turn it over. They did it to Zion. They're doing it to everybody. That's exactly what the Warriors have experienced for years with Steph, right? Like they're going to take the ball out of his hand, and the Warriors have not done that themselves. What are you thinking when they're doing this? And I think it does fit this roster because they got good recovery guys. Like they got guys who can slide over and kind of cover 1.5 guys after a double team. What are you thinking about all that?
I was thinking like I could just envision Stackhouse in the meeting like, explain to me why y'all aren't doing this. Like I don't understand. Like I literally don't get it.
It also helps. Right. It also helps when Jerry Stackhouse is the 6th defender on the sideline, like basically also trapping over there.
Absolutely. The part that you hit on though, TK, is it's the closeouts. Mm-hmm. Number one, but I think because they're like playing 20 minutes, they're rested. Watch how hard they go on closeouts. Even when they don't have a chance, you see the guy make the run and get a hand up. Like, and on Derek White, like if you're late, it doesn't matter. Like he's hitting it. So you could see them still doing that. And before, I'm gonna go look at the film, but I just remember last year the closeouts being like, oh, I missed it. Kind of, you don't go out, but they're running to the corners, even when they blew a rotation. You could tell it's a different mindset, but you got to have dudes who can close out. And look who you got: Kyle Anderson, Jonathan Kuminga, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, who's probably the best ever at it, right? Moses Moody. Like you got guys who are long, who are like a bit ball hawks in general. So as long as you can still guard the 3 line by putting pressure, I think it works. But the part that I felt like they always should have learned from is that when you speed the other team up, they make mistakes.
Yep.
Like that's what the Warriors do. Like, so they pressure everything. And like guys like Buddy Hield, he doesn't have a shot unless he's pressured. Like he's got to get out there and be aggressive. You might as well, because you're going to get beat off the dribble. So you might as well go create something. And they got a lot of guys doing that. Steph is doing. You see Steph is working to get, you know, how it is they do the screen. Remember how many switches they just gave up? They don't do that anymore. They're fighting through the screen. Like Tatum was trying to get Steph on him, and they're like, nah, you get Wiggins, bro. You're not running. Like Steph is fighting through the screen, making sure Tatum sticks. Like you're seeing a lot of that stuff. And they did get burnt on threes. Let's not act like
third quarter.
Celtics went second. It's crazy in the third quarter. And a lot of guys end up being open, and you know that's the reason they don't want to do it. Because that's the part where Steve Kerr is like, oh my God, he's wide open, right? So let's just stay home. But they got to fight through that because this is the way they have to play D. Actually, they're actually not individually that good defensively. But as a team,
I mean, they got a lot of
they're
good
better. They're better. Well, let's just say
better.
Yep.
I mean, like, but everybody's like picking on Buddy Hield.
Yeah.
And
well, they're really
Lindy Waters.
Yeah.
Yep,
they got some guys where it's like you got places to attack, but together, if they got the right mindset, they're
well,
so
and Draymond
tough.
behind him and Draymond with the center, which has been Draymond's argument now,
Yeah.
really since the end of last season. Like, give me a center, let me roam. I can cover up some stuff. I will say on Buddy Hield, several coaches have been like, not that bad defensively. Impressed,
right.
like they've kind of been impressed about his hustle and his ability to get in on the action.
It's the competing. He competes. He fights.
Yeah,
like,
he's going to have to because they're going to pick him out every season.
Joe Mazzulla was just
It's kind of like, geez,
Yeah.
like that's like take it easy.
Did you hear his post game last night though? Buddy Hield's impressed me with his level of seriousness about winning. And I know like he's really kind of gained the respect of Steph and Draymond in the locker room. Not just as a personality, but you just hear him talk about like basketball or even across the league. Like he's like, I feel like, and Steve has said this, like they like the stage of the career that Buddy Hield's at. Mm-hmm. The willingness to obviously sit in this bench role but also, like, he was talking last night about how Stackhouse and Draymond, like, he got into a little bickering match last night after there was a mistake. He let Tatum go right. At one point, him and Kuminga were yelling at each other. And then there was a timeout where they were all going at it. And he was basically saying, like, they're yelling at him about, like, championship habits. Like, don't let Tatum go right. Like, you know that's the game plan. Don't allow it. And he was saying, like, you know, I have brain farts sometimes, and I'm trying to, like, cut those out. And I just, you know,
cut me some slack, guys. I'm refurbished here.
You just there you go. You just didn't know coming off the Philadelphia experience if it's like, oh, is this a player in decline that got in a winning Philly situation and was completely played off the floor in the playoffs, and Nick Nurse just decided, hey, he's not a playoff player. Like that was a concern coming in, I'd say, and he's alleviated that. Obviously, he's not going to shoot like he has, but he's really playing, like, bought into, like, the winning style.
You don't think he can shoot 50% of the season from three? It's probably not.
He's like that. He's going to be great on. You ain't got to worry about his defensive effort. That's like that.
No,
he's going to get after it.
He and Steph have been really, really great together from the first minute. You can see Kirk getting them together more. I think I counted up. They played like 18 minutes together last night. They're like plus 23. You'd think the defense would suffer, but it really hasn't. I mean, they played, you know, again, they're scrambling. Steph's playing very good help defense. I think everyone knows when, you know, Buddy Hield's on the floor, you got help.
1,000%. 1,000%.
But it's been, to have someone else, we've seen what that means when Klay has gone off in the past with Steph, what that does to a defense, because they can't overload on the other guy because you still got Steph out there. It's been nuclear. I did not expect it like this, but you know, if Buddy Hield just shoots 40%, it's huge for the Warriors. He's shooting 50% from three and fighting, you know, and doing these things. And let's just say it, you know, so part of the reason why they couldn't really do the scramble defense, this blitzing overload on certain guys, is they had Klay Thompson and Chris Paul.
I knew you
know,
I knew it was coming.
You know, Klay's playing great for the Mavericks. I just want to say that right now, but. Just go back to that playing game in Sacramento. Like they had no chance against those guys because the stuff was happening too fast, and they were switching, and they get a bad switch, and they'd be scrambling, and all of a sudden it's in a wide open three or a drive to the basket. They got guys who are fighting a little bit more. Maybe it won't hold up, And, Buddy Hield is not a great defensive player. And, they've got some others, as MC pointed out, who are not great defensive players. But, if it works at the Garden, even without Jaylen Brown, it's going to work a lot of places. This defense is going to carry.
It may not work at Oklahoma City, but
listen, there's going to be bad games. Everybody has bad games, but they were the 16th rated defense last season. I think we all felt that. Eye test met that there was times they just could not stop anybody, particularly at home. That was the bizarre thing. They got roasted at home several times. I think there are 2 this year right now, right behind Oklahoma City. If they're in the top 5 makes a difference. That
again, it's a small sample size, but Oklahoma City's defense is so insanely better than everybody else's. And the Warriors is actually way better than third.
Yep.
They are playing incredible defense right now.
So Slater, I got a question for you, but I have this thought about Buddy. I think the difference, it's not just his shooting. I think it matters that they go run some of the sets for him. Like they could run some Steph Curry sets for him because he's really good on the catch and shoot.
Klay Thompson
actions with him. By the way. Yeah.
Like Udoka said that in Houston. He's like, it's just Klay Thompson. Like that's
so that's what it gives them that same vibe where you can put Steph on one side, draw that attention, and then run the actions. He's not just standing in the corner. Which Slater, I wanted to ask you. My phone was blowing up about it. And I saw it on social media. Are you ready to call Buddy Hield an upgrade over last year's Klay? Not over Klay Thompson. Obviously, Klay Thompson is a far and away better player. But what they're getting from Buddy so far an upgrade over what they got from Klay last year?
I would just say this, Klay Thompson January last year, remember when he moved to the bench, scored 35 and was scorching hot for a month and a half, basically. Buddy Hield's first 8 games with the Warriors are no more scorching than a Klay Thompson 8-game stretch during the last couple regular seasons. His best, subsection. Now, if you tell me that this is a Buddy Hield on a pretty consistent basis, again, not 50% from 3, but mid 40s, great locker room guy, hustling on defense. If this is pretty consistently the Buddy Hield over an 82-game schedule, yeah, sure, that's better than the inconsistencies that Klay Thompson delivered over the last couple of seasons, particularly, by the way, to start seasons, which, was very impactful. How slow Klay started last year, and for sure, snowballed. And so yes, I guess. I mean, Buddy Hield's first 8 games are far better than Klay's first 8 games last year. But let's not forget, Klay Thompson had months at a time, even in his post-injury state, where he was just as hot as Buddy Hield is right now.
Yeah, and if they could have played him or survived playing him at the 3 or 4 more than they did, their base were playing him at the 4 defensively, I think it would have been better. And maybe the Mavericks, that's how they're doing it, and have other guys play the wings. It just was when he had to play defense against somebody good is when they got towards.
Well, you mentioned the Chris Paul thing earlier. I mean, their lineup options were so much worse last year. If you just plugged Klay into the Buddy Hield spot last night, you still have Gary Payton's flying around, and they have the center behind them, and Stackhouse is over there causing doubles. He could probably he could take a switch against Tatum late and probably hold up similarly to what Buddy Hield did, but. I'm not. Buddy Hield's playing. Buddy Hield is the 6th man of the year favorite through 8 games. So,
through 8 games, I think that notion should be that's crazy. Eventually, at some point, we're gonna see if Buddy can draw a double, right? If he gets that good, where it's you draw 2, and then we got to see him draw 2, make the right play.
The part of it,
Klay was so valuable. It's wild that
it's indisputable, and it's a thing that not everybody wants to talk about, but we're going to talk about early next week. I'm going to write a bigger story for Monday. Is the mood of Buddy Hield compared to the mood of Klay Thompson is very different.
Klay Thompson last year.
Klay Thompson of last
season
was a cloud over the organization, and it's. A lot of it's been reported. This isn't oh my gosh, I'm telling y'all, we know that all this. And Buddy Hield's the opposite right now. He's so grateful to be on the Warriors right now. He's so grateful to be in the system. He believes this was the perfect system, whereas Philly, he wasn't getting passed too much. He was just
he's just standing out there waiting on Embiid to give him the ball.
And he's he can play 18 minutes. He can come off the bench. He can there'll probably be a game if he's getting cooked defensively and doesn't have a shot. Steve Kerr could play him 10 minutes and he is going to be fine. We all know Klay Thompson wasn't fine with that. Klay Thompson told the Warriors, I'm not fine with that. That's why I'm leaving. So that part of the switch, as uncomfortable as it can be for some people to talk about even within the Warriors, is like, it's obvious. Like, it's a mood upgrade. We all know that.
And the other thing is the Warriors were kind of planning for this, which is why they pulled their offer. Slater has reported that. It's like they were like, we got some other things we got to do here. And I think they would have taken him back for a lesser number than they had originally offered him. But he was going to get shuffled down. He was not going to start on this team. He is starting on a really good team right now. He's still a really good player. Just the things that they had made it like it wasn't the right thing for him to start. And he was not going to like that. And he made the decision to leave. The other thing I want to point out, and Slater, you wrote about this as the season was starting, Mike Dunleavy Jr. is on a roll right now. Like Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton, we'll see, Kyle Anderson, drafting Podziemski, drafting Trace Jackson Davis. Like he is hitting on these middle, rung kind of players that they really needed. They didn't have a lot of those guys. And they're just significantly better because these guys all can play. And they're all the guys that Dunleavy's picked up. Now there's other guys who, obviously you have Steph, you have Draymond, whatever, but Kuminga was drafted and Moody were drafted by Bob Myers when Dunleavy was in the front office, but he has not missed. Lindy Waters, like whatever he turns out to be, just giving them what he's given is a Mike Dunleavy feather in his cap. He is, I'm just impressed by that. Everybody he picks up, none of them at great expense, have been real players for them and been tough-minded, have been fit right in, have accepted their roles. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see what he does with Kuminga. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that, but Mike Dunleavy, man, he is like the players got to be like Steph and Draymond got to be really happy about what.
Yeah, they like Mike and they think Mike's sharp. And I mean, you guys talk to Mike Dunleavy, he is sharp. Like it's just a reality. He's like he's a sharp basketball mind. And I will say, and he would too. Like you mentioned Lindy Waters. A lot of that's more Kent Lake, Brian Atkinson, David Fatoki. That's G League scouting. You mentioned the Kyle Anderson, D'Anthony Melton. Buddy Hield, like that turned into a very complicated sign and trade this summer to like fit those in and make sure all the mechanics, like John Phelps, their cap guy, was huge in that. A lot of their drafting has over the last few years has become more analytic based, and even some of their free agent stuff. And that's Pabale, who's their analytics guy, and Mike really utilizes every leg of the front office. And that includes an aggressive Joe Lacob, who, by the way, he greenlit them going into the tax again. They're staying in the repeater.
Yeah, it was Hield. Like Hield took them in the tax.
Hield took them into the tax, which they didn't, they didn't necessarily have to do. No, again, they ducked some stuff financially this year, and they let Chris Paul go. But I think in a lot of ways, you could say them resetting what they did financially, getting into a healthier spot where they're in a much more tradable position come January, February. Like that was probably shrewd too. Now, again, I think we all know they haven't hit the home run that they've tried to hit. Maybe they will, and there's a very decent chance if they haven't by February, March, April, May, we're sitting there in the playoffs or fringe of the playoffs and saying, look, their flaw is they never got the second big guy. But I would agree with you. Like it does seem like a front office right now that's on a roll with like, not even fringe moves, like middle moves,
6, 7, 8 men, on the roster, of course, with the Warriors at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. But I've been impressed. Just everybody he's brought in. It started with obviously trading Jordan Poole for Chris Paul, kind of that was the salary stuff. But then drafting Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis, that was a sign that like these were the types of players he was going to bring in. Those guys can play with Steph, which is the very most important thing.
I do feel like even though they haven't gotten a big fish, like this is the path to the big fish, right? Like who knows? Like they could come back home for the big Klay showdown, 7-3, right? At worst,
it'd be 7-4 after Klay gives them a 35.
You know what I'm saying? 7-4, like it's fine. But like this is, I've been saying for the entire time, like they're shaped to be a good regular season team. Right, they play hard, they play defense, they shoot threes, they shoot it well. They've got the clutch player of the year. They've got Draymond Green, who could attack just about every like front court matchup, and Wiggins, who can handle just about any backcourt matchup. Like they're kind of positioned to win, but like if you just stretch this out 7-4 and just stretch that out through to February, like they're going to look like a good place to want to go. And that's probably the best you can hope for. Before it was, come be a part of our championship culture. Now, whoever comes, it's like, hey, we got all the shots and minutes you want. Like we kind of need you to do that. Look at Buddy Hield. He has no, like, his light is neon green. Like, just shoot as much as you like. To me, I feel like this is the best path to getting that. May not happen at the trade deadline, but they certainly would be viable if they were 4-7 right now and moving ahead.
I'd put it this way: like, NBA players are like NBA fans. They're consumers of media and takes and, you know, articles, and they watch games and they form opinions about other teams. I mean, go into any locker room, go talk to a player, like, they've got opinions on every other team, and they're like, man, what's going on with Milwaukee? Man, what's going on here? So right now, the Warriors are like kind of a hot topic in the league as far as like, 7-1. What's going on there? Like, are they kind
what's happening? Yeah, absolutely.
So again, this is completely theoretical speculation, but if you are a Giannis Antetokounmpo and you are starting to go, you know, what is going on around me? Do I want to look elsewhere? And we all know how much agency players have and kind of maneuvering themselves where they want to go. And this goes beyond Giannis, but if a player suddenly, a bigger fish, wants to get himself somewhere, the Warriors just are more appealing the better they look as an environment. And right now they look a whole lot better to the outside world than they did a month ago. That's just the reality.
Yeah, and
especially
are they
last year this time?
Yeah, you know, they tried to get Paul George. Paul George, you know, theoretically wanted to join. They just couldn't figure out the trade with the Clippers. But this is what, you know, this is increasing the value of some of these players. I don't know how much. And let's just bring up Kuminga. You know, he is obviously not thrilled about not starting. He started with the first 2 games, Slater, and then was taking three because then Steph got hurt. And you know, he has been frustrated at times the last few years. Does he exactly fit in a starting lineup with Steph? Probably not. Does he fit exactly in a second unit? Better, but he's not going to be thrilled with that, and sometimes not even there. Do you think? It's like I go back and forth. I think, listen, they're going so well. Do they have to make a trade? He's still a restricted free agent at the end of the year. You can still do something with him there. I know it's hard to trade a restricted free agent, so maybe you get into a little trouble there. Or do you say, you know what? Let's just his value is increasing. Our roster's looking better. As you say, stars are going to be looking at us. Let's make the move. I mean, do they make the move with Kuminga, or do you think it's grown in likelihood because of 7-1 start, or do you think it's less than likelihood?
I'd say that the non-extension kept the flexibility of the trade. I mean, he's a very easily tradable piece now, whereas if he signed the extension, it would have been almost impossible this season, number one. Number two, the frustration from Kuminga wasn't just, hey, why did I move to the bench in game 4? It started in game 1, 2, 3. He played like 20 minutes, 18 minutes, 22 minutes. He was in a line.
Yeah, he didn't close, I think.
He didn't. Yeah, no. I mean, they were blowing.
They blew out, but he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't in that kind of.
No, I mean, he was being minimized. He was starting, and they were yanking him and barely putting him back in the half. And by the way, the minutes he was playing in lineups that made no sense, really. He was like basically a 2 or a 3. Now, again, like, I think part of that is because the players wanted it, including him. But he's playing in better lineups now. He looks a little bit better, but we all know what he wants to be. We all know that he wants, you know, he really works on his skill. He works extremely hard all summer. He likes his mid-range. He wants to take the 3. He wants to grow who he is. And I would say within the 7-1 start, especially how they're winning, it's becoming clear, like, the way he helps them is in a limited box where it's downhill stuff, it's slashing, it's defending, it's, you know, taking the open 3. But except if we're talking about the Houston overtime game, it's not a lot of give him the ball and let him operate. You're the second leading scorer on a playoff team, which is, I think, in his mind, what he was hoping coming into this season. So he's doing his job. He's being very professional right now, but I don't necessarily think it's like such a solved situation. And because they're winning, he's like, yes, I love to be in this more minimized role, because we know who he wants to be. I mean, Marcus, you know better than anybody.
I just think there's also this idea too. It's like Steph and Draymond are gonna be here forever. I mean, they're under contract for 3 years, but maybe it's 2. Like, who knows? Like, maybe that's how it works. And there is still a fear that if Kuminga goes to a different roster and he turns into who he said he was, and Steph and Draymond are gone, you gave up the pillar of your future. So it's just like, can you just hang on? Can you win enough? Like, can you put them in big situations? Can you that's clearly what Moses Moody said. Like, hey, you'll be here for 10 years, 15 years. We love you. We'll always figure it out. Just get us through this time. I don't think Kuminga has that disposition, but I do feel like there's a sentiment in the Warriors where it's like, it's gonna hurt if he's on another team and he turns into a superstar and you're without Steph, in 3 years, right? However this works. So like that thing is like, do you want to just make the relationship work enough to where you win, he looks good, and say, this is going to be your franchise? I don't know if Kuminga wants to wait for that. I know some of his people don't want to wait for that.
Yeah, and it's going to take a contract. That's the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not just patience. It's that contract is coming up. At some point, you have to, if he's going to stay a Warrior, you paying him $40 million a year, $38 million a year, whatever the number is going to be. That's the difficulty, and that takes him right back in. Whatever, first apron, deep in a luxury tax. They ain't getting out of it if they're paying that. I hear you, and who the person is who's saying, I need a star after Steph, right? It's the most powerful person in the franchise, who's a huge Kuminga fan. But man, I don't know if the contractual timing works. But I also say, on the one saying, like, maybe let it roll and you just go with what they got this season, unless you can get Giannis, right? Unless, I don't know what the list would be. Devin Booker, they're not, Suns aren't trading him. Well, what would be the other list of people that you would put Kuminga on the table for? It would have been Markkanen, but he can't be traded this season. Like, what's the other likely names here?
But I'm saying, I think that's the backdoor way to say, man, we could make this work.
to Kuminga?
To say, yeah, we're only going to trade you for the superstar that we want you to be, which only limits what you trade him for, which means you're saying, let's make this work, right? Like, that's the thing. Do you trade him if Nas Reed becomes available?
Nah,
no, you're not doing it. That's what I'm saying. You're not doing it to get the pieces that he'll be. So, to me, that's a backdoor way of doing the same thing.
I'll say this. I could see us having a conversation come January, February, if this team looks really good, but Kuminga's still kind of lost in the shuffle a bit, where it could make sense for both sides, for Kuminga to get to more of a franchise. Brooklyn, for example, who has a lot of cap space and has, into the future. And like a higher level role player came back to the Warriors, just because, like, to me, the timelines they're not matching up. Like, it's year 4 for Jonathan Kuminga. It is year 4. It's not year 2 anymore. Like, it's time. Like, the one thing I will say about Kuminga, he might be the hardest worker on the team. If not, he's like among the top. Like, he is very serious about, like, what he wants to be, and he works in that way. And part of that is, like, he wants to be a skilled scoring wing. And, like, you can't sit there and tell him, no, you'll never be that. Like, just kind of, you just be this hustle, slashing guy. I think, and again, I think this is very much human nature. Like, you can compare, hey, Andre Iguodala came off the bench. Well, Andre Iguodala came off the bench after he already had his career. It's a little like, remember Aaron Gordon in Orlando?
He was an all-star. Yeah.
Aaron Gordon in Orlando tested it out, became the star, eventually came to an understanding, hey, like, in a winning situation, maybe I'm not a 1 or a 2. Let me go be that in Denver. I still think Kuminga needs the
chance.
He wants to see.
Yeah,
because he might be right. You know what I mean?
He might be right.
Yeah. The problem is he's just not a 3 in the Steve Kerr system, and the 4 is signed for 3 more years. And
that's where I'm saying, come January, February, it just might make sense for both sides. And I'm not. We'll see. Again, like this.
Are you calling Dorian Finney-Smith in a?
It makes the most
Johnson.
sense for
Anybody? No.
For me, it makes the most sense for.
I mean, we'll see. And again, 3-team trades can get involved. Like, he can get, interesting at the deadline. I'm just saying, like, it just still seems it still feels like square peg, round hole, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the problem
but also, like, they're 7-1, and obviously they're good. They're better than what we probably thought. But are they good enough to not try it? That's the other thing. Like, can it be so good where it's like, yeah, we're not going to try this guy as our clear it out. Let's go for him. Let's create the offense. Like, what?
Well, the one thing Steve Kerr is making clear this year is, like, it is a night-by-night basis. It is a full tilt. This monster rotation is going to go after this win, and If that means you're playing 2 minutes or if that means you're playing 25 minutes, it does not matter. We're not doing anything thinking about the future or development or this or that. It's just like, hey, Gary Payton looks great in this Boston matchup. He's playing more tonight. And that's when, like, to your question, like, they're not just going to be like, hey, it'd be good for Kuminga to, like, get, 18 shots in 35 minutes a night for 2 straight weeks. Unless the rotation for the win that night makes sense for that, they're just not going to do it because they're just so focused on like maximizing their regular season wins.
And the other problem here is, well, there's 2 problems. I said in the contract, what's the number? What can they pay him? Anything that's like, if it's 35, that still takes them into really dangerous salary territory, which they just got out of. And 2, if they don't sign him, I mean, he's going to be they didn't sign him, so he's going to be a restricted free agent, and it's really hard to trade restricted free agents. You can do it; it's hard. So like it becomes into like either they trade him in February or they're not going to get much for him. It's what it comes down to, and
or it becomes a match scenario. But
it's awkward. It's awkward, and that's why these guys sign. Everybody who the team wants basically signs the rookie extension, and the guys who don't, the countdown begins. The reason why they felt they had to sign Jordan Poole when they did, other than he got punched by Draymond, but it was really because if he gets a restricted free agency, we're probably going to lose him. They literally thought that because of someone's going to be out there. Now that was back when there was more cap room, so there's not a ton of teams with cap room, but you just get to that countdown and the player starts thinking about leaving. It's like with Klay. Like once Klay started thinking about it, it just became a march towards inevitability. I don't know. It's exactly the same for Kuminga, but it's interesting. And this start does make you think maybe they don't want to mess with it. But then if they don't mess with it and they don't trade him, they might not get much for him or might not get anything for him, of real value at the end of the season.
Question for you. What's the setting where Kuminga is who he thinks he is?
I think it's power forward on a team that doesn't have like a scoring center, so you just can let him go work.
Shooting center would be great for him.
Exactly. Like somebody gets out of his way, he can turn on power forwards, get to the rim, hit the mid range. I think he could do it.
I'll tell you right now exactly who it would be. The Pacers before they got Siakam sniffed around on Kuminga. That's known. They were really looking for kind of like a bigger forward scoring guy, and they went and got Siakam.
They got Miles Turner, who's spends a lot of time out.
If you just put Kuminga in the Siakam spot in Indiana, you got Halliburton's your point guard, Miles Turner's your rim protecting stretch 5. Like that's the environment that I think could, like that type of thing could maximize what he could be, and then we would all know.
Yep, and I think it's the eventuality is that it will be somewhere else. The Warriors are too committed to the guys they've got. And he doesn't quite fit the Kerr system, but there's still time. He's still young. There's a chance that this all works. And I know the owner of the Warriors would really want that to happen. But we shall see. The Moses Moody thing happened because Moses was fine with biding his time. Moses is a different kind of guy, right? We know he's a much more patient, much more thoughtful. You can tell Moses, you know what, your role isn't so much right now, but if you just like wait it out, we think we can find a role for you in 60 games or in 2 years. Not many first round picks, even 3 years down the road.
He's a lower ceiling player, and
that too.
I mean, he would never come out and say that necessarily, but he understands, like,
I mean, he took the money, like he
Yep. And it just that doesn't happen with first round picks, Farrell. Even the bad ones don't think that. So the Kuminga thing is much more typical of a lottery pick. And
you mentioned Joe Lacob. He was fired up last night. He came
in Boston.
In Boston? Oh, of course he was. Yeah.
He showed up. That's the only game on this road trip he's going to. He's like, I couldn't help myself. Had to show up here.
It might be his final game with Wick as the owner on the other side. So I thought there's guarantee he was going to be there for that one.
Yeah, no. He
were you there? Was Kerr? Would they get on Kerr very much, or was it just normal stuff?
I was even talking to people pregame. I was like, the only way this becomes like a huge thing is if the game ops in Boston wants to, and they're like showing them on the big screen during free throws and stuff like that. They just announced him pregame. It was a decent little boo. I thought it was funny that there was like 4 guys next to Kerr. They look like almost like Barstool type dudes sitting there all in Jason Tatum Team USA shirts. I don't know. Did you guys see that?
No,
it was Steve Kerr, Harry Stotts, and then it was 4,
Oh, you talking about the fans?
Yeah, drunk guys, basically. I mean, I assume they were drunk. All in Jason Tatum team going nuts for Tatum all game. And it was a funny optic. But
it was tough for them, right? Because Tatum did not score much early on, but then he hit those 2 threes in the third quarter. Then I could feel a little bit of the, oh yeah, Kerr, you idiot, you didn't play in the Olympics. It's such a it's not a stupid thing.
There was a couple
of hometown hero, and he didn't play in the Olympics, but they did win the gold medal. I'll just put that out. They did win the gold medals.
No, Steve made that very clear. Steve was extremely sarcastic in his pregame press conference. But there was a couple Steve Kerr sucks chants, but they weren't like super hardy, like finals level.
It wasn't like Draymond.
Yeah.
You can tell Steve Kerr's getting a little tired of it though.
Steve is. That's another thing. Steve is like invigorated right now. He's really into the game. He hopped off the bench for a timeout last night. Did you see it when Gary Payton dove? And it was like, it was like he jumped out on the court. It felt like like a Mike Malone type timeout. He had I wrote about it, but he really got into Steph. I
saw that live. He was
I was really close to I happened to be in a part of the arena that was really close to the bench when that happened. He was like really, fired up about it. And I just, I can remember going back to Hawaii that like people there were saying like, man, he's really bringing it. He was a lot of times I know in the past couple of years, he's maybe sunk into the background and allowed some of his coaches to really kind of, step up their voices. And I think this year, while he's allowing that, obviously Stackhouse and Terry Stotts, like from what I gather, he came into camp, like really kind of, hammering the messaging of like, like the margin for error stuff, the limiting turnovers. And like, he's been more like outwardly vocal about like, really stern in a lot of ways, I guess you would say.
Listen, he's got a gold medal. We know he's got the 4 championships, but maybe the gold medal, I thought maybe, listen, it's a long summer to be working after, the seasons that he's had with the Warriors. But I think that actually was good for his energy level. First of all, they didn't have the playoff run, so you don't have that whole thing. And then you have, a pretty interesting kind of chemistry situation with the Olympics, and you have LeBron and Steph and Durant. I just think that was kind of refreshing for him, or whatever you want to call it. And then he just rolls right into this, and I just think he feels, juiced as a coach.
With him. I think the guys that you got with him, like bring Stotts and Stackhouse in.
Yep.
I think that helps.
Those are great choices. Great choices. I don't know Stackhouse very well, but like that mentality really fits.
The Stackhouse was a Dunleavy. They know each other well from back in the North Carolina Duke days. Now Stackhouse is a little older, but like, and Mike's been doing a lot of the college scouting. Like, when he signed on to the Warriors, under Bob Myers, he was originally a college scout, lived on the East Coast. Jerry was a coach at Vanderbilt. And he's the one that kind of suggested Stackhouse to Steve and introduced Stackhouse to Steve in a sense.
Yeah, it's been great. And and Stotts, they are doing some trailblazer stuff, right? They're doing some little flare screens for the guards. And I just think it's been really good for Kerr. I just think he feels good with his staff. A little change is good sometimes. A little personalities differences is good. And you could tell the way he's really kind of approached this season. Obviously, 7-1 does not hurt. You just, the preseason though, listen, whatever the preseason means, they were great in the preseason. They were freaking incredible in the preseason, and sometimes that matters. Like in 2014, MT, remember that? They're kicking ass in the preseason. Off they go into the regular season and win a championship in 15.
Is Raymond Ritter over there?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Kerr is feeling that. Kerr is feeling
5 preseason games.
The preseason means nothing other than mood, right? Other than culture, other than energy level. And they had the energy level in preseason, and it's carried into the regular. It might stop. We might see.
I'm trying to figure out what y'all said about last year. That's all I'm trying to figure out. What y'all saying about
last year was tough.
Steve Kerr and his coaching last year.
Last year was tough for him. Klay was a continuous issue, and Draymond got suspended twice. Like, I cannot have been a fun. And the season before that, Draymond punches Jordan Poole in October. Like, these were not.
They had a coach die last year. I mean, absolutely tragically. I mean, that like shook
in front of them, right? I mean, with them. It's incredibly tragic. These have been really trying years. This one might be too. We don't know. It's early, but the signs are that it will not be. It will be a more normal season if the Warriors can have one. And I think that helps everybody too after what they've gone through.
I want to see two things with this team still before I'm like fully believer. I want to see them go through like a little bit of a losing stretch and like see how the locker room handles this 12, 13 man rotation, whatever, when there's losses going on, when there's struggles going on. And then I want to see them continue. Like, I want more games where they're playing young, athletic, rangy defenses that are switching like Houston did in the second half and forcing them to score on them more in like one-on-one settings. I want to see more of that. You guys saw that second half in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
That got bleak for a while.
They didn't want to. Nobody wanted the ball there for a while.
Yeah.
Like nobody wanted. And it was getting, Podziemski was getting picked, but he was making plays. And just
that was what was funny is they survived because those 3 Podziemski shots on the stretch of that game were like.
At some point, you know what I'm saying? Do you guys understand he's left-handed? Because he's pumping to his right and they're jumping because, they love to jump. That's great. Shot blockers like to jump. And he's like, okay, and I'll go left hand. And he wasn't going to finish with his right. He was going to finish with his left. Anyway.
I still have skepticism about their offense is like, in the high pressure moments. But, we've always thought that, right? I mean,
or when their threes aren't falling, like where do they go?
Kuminga and Wiggins become very important in those moments. And we'll see if they can bring it. And Oklahoma City and Cleveland, the next 2 games, and not in that order, Cleveland and Oklahoma City. Let's see what they got. But then other games coming up. Dallas is like, here you go. Let's just a little bit. Who's guarding Klay? Because Wiggins will be on Luka, and you figure the other guard or other, Moses Moody will be on Kyrie. Or Steph going to guard Kyrie?
By the way, might be Podziemski by that point. Melton, maybe they'll start.
I'm going to say, is Steph going to guard Klay? Maybe not. Maybe Steph guards Kyrie.
The other thing you can do, they did it. In Washington, they were like, you know what? We want to slow Jordan Poole early. They started Gary Payton.
Yep.
You could just start Gary Payton.
Put him on Klay and say, you are not.
They put Gary Payton on Luka.
I'm curious about game plan in that game because I think they probably would want Klay to be really aggressive early. Like the emotions that are going to be flowing in that building, and when Klay is emotional, like some shots are going up.
Yep. I'm curious just because of the Luka.
So you saying they're going to put Buddy on him?
Who's starting? Like we don't even know who's starting, right?
Yeah, we don't know.
I think Moody would be the best. I think Moody would be the best guy to be on Klay.
Melton. I mean, we haven't seen him much, but Melton's one of the best. He's coming. He's probably playing in Cleveland, by the way.
So. They could put Steph on PJ Washington. Like they've done stuff like that, and kind of sort it through that way. But Draymond on Klay.
Steph's taking Kyrie.
Yeah, that's
give me Kyrie.
Yep, that's the standard.
At least to start. At least to start.
All right, guys, we do it.
Yeah, so Warriors plus minus back in probably a pretty regular rhythm would be the guess. We'll have most post games, I would say, probably, and then try to do bigger picture stuff. And we should.
Hey, you need to be on top of these post games, man. Let's go. All 82.
Well,
as people ask me, all 82, all 82 kind of merged with Warriors plus minus is what I can say. It's kind of like all the 82. Same entity.
Yeah, all 82 is right here, baby. All 82 is right here.
All whatever we're gonna do. But we are on Odyssey
now. I'm not in my 20s anymore.
I can say that.
Not in my 20s anymore. I will just say that.
You're cooked. I will say we're on Odyssey. I do TK show, so we are now brought the Warriors plus minus to Odyssey. It's a good deal for all of us. Glad to be back. You might think all these calls for us to come back were terrible, but we made it back. We crawled through the tunnel, and we are back. We are not done. We are alive for whatever happens this season. Good to be back, guys.